gardening in a snowstorm in her hat and her the family comes over, I can park them all and not on the street, that kind of stuff. So there's some projects going on, some new siding going on the side of the house, this rock face, so it matches the garden, so it matches, so it blends in, so it's outside to inside, it feels like. Our backyard patio it's a living room, it's a living space. And so we like to entertain back there. So it looks so nice. You're going, now who can we invite? We just go, okay, we're gonna have family over, of course, yeah. Have family, we're going to have the staff, of course. Oh, are we? Well, okay. Let me see if I can stall a little bit while you all come online. I'm glad you are here at Waters Garden Center. Today's garden class is on lilacs, but that'll be real short. I explained that in 15 minutes. So I thought I'd expand it a little bit. Go companions, how to get them to bloom longer, how to keep the bugs out of them. And I got some handouts on how to prune them. So you'll be, that's kind of a mystery for some folks. So food is the most important thing. But before we start, I thought I'd show you a couple things that are brand new that you've never seen before. We found a tanner up in Idaho. Tanners are people that work with leathers. So a leather person, and she made, this is the coolest thing ever. So let me see if I can show off here. So it's, instead of macrame, she made a beautiful hanging basket. She's going, that's cool. Now we've got something, because macrame is so 1960s. Come on, it just, we can get out of that era. So now it's kind of, it is back. And we've got all those too. We found some that are made of wood. We found some that are made of different materials. So now you look at the plant hanger and you go, oh, wow, never seen that. So just something new and different. Another one we found, Mackenzie found this one. Up in Las Vegas. Actually, this is the same tanner. She works with leather, but she's a gardener. So she comes up with these kinds of things. I love these kind of people. Different trades, but still gardener, we can come in. She just put a terrarium with a leather strap. And now you've got our air plant selection, or anyway, air plants, a way to keep them looking good. Now this is a piece of art, not just gardening. That's pretty cool. I'll show that off to you all. So I think something new. Make sure I don't break this. I'm going to put it right here. Maybe it won't break. Don't go anywhere. And then we've pushed these maybe 2-3 weeks ago. So there's spring bulbs, Easter bulbs, amaryllis. This is an amaryllis. You always see them at Christmas in red and white. Well, now we found other colors, dipped them in wax. So they're spring colors, not Christmas. And then this will bloom like this for a couple months. You don't have to water it or do anything. It just does this because they store all their energy inside their bulb. And so that's just how they work. Most bulbs are that way. The daffodils that are in bloom right now, the tulips that are coming up, the crocus that are in bloom, they formed that flower last year. And so now they're using all that energy this year. They really don't need a lot to keep going. The reason you're watering those out in the gardens are to form next year's flower. So you maintain them, you fertilize, you water them so that they can keep forming the next year's flower. Well, that's the same with amaryllis. All bulbs are sort of that way. So they're dipped in wax. We made this to be cute, fun, and disposable. It's not made, so she asked, can I pot it afterwards? A gardener, only a gardener would say this. This is meant to be like your poinsettias. If your poinsettia is ugly, like I went over to my favorite Mexican food place, and they still have their poinsettia in the floor by the door, and it looks mangy. I'm going, please, for the love of gardening, throw that thing away. It's made to be disposable. Yes, you could peel the wax off and get it to grow again. It won't grow outdoors. It's an indoor plant, and I can show you how to get it to rebloom next year if you wanted, but really it's just meant to, throw it away, start over again. I've got another series coming for Mother's Day. That'll be here, I think, next week. A whole nother set. We've got another couple hundred bulbs coming. We've dipped them in moss. We've got succulents stuck to them. They're really cool. They're meant to be given as, I mean, right, Mother's Day, I've got these waves of men coming with children in tow. Going, I got to find her something. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking this is perfect. So fuchsias do not do, we do fuchsias, they're an annual.
Normally, like up in Seattle, that was always something I got every year.
Yeah. We'll have fuchsias. She's asking, can we have fuchsias for Mother's Day? And I may have them. What happens is it's so cold so late here. The fuchsias come online in the summer. So I have fuchsias. Are they ready for Mother's Day? It's a real, it's a touch and go. Same with dahlias. Maybe they'll be ready. Maybe they won't. I'm not quite sure, but they will be right around there. So I'll have lots of hanging baskets, lots of gifty kind of flowery things for the gardening moms. Of course, there's always guys, gift card. She loves, just give her 90 minutes to herself at the garden center with a gift card. That's like glorious to women. I'm telling you, just take the kids, just let her go. Buy her two, one for her and her girlfriend, and you'll be like a superhero. Anyway, that's just some new things coming up. And I think that's all I had. Just I saw them, went, ooh, that's kind of neat. I knew gardeners would be doing the same thing. Okay, lilacs. They are heavily budded right now. If not in bloom, at the lower elevations, they're starting to crack color. They're showing blooms. And so as long as the flower is closed, it's safe from bugs and cold. You don't have to worry about them. You don't have to cover them or do anything. As soon as they open, they have a surprising amount of antifreeze in the structure of the plant. So they'll take this cold climate, even though they're blooming in April when they're exposed to a lot of cold. Like right now, we can still see snow, just like today. But it's like flash snow or flash frost or flash. It's gone by noon. So that's April for us. That's the mountains of central Arizona. That's how it works. So lilacs love that kind of weather. They're perfect. They come online and bloom right after the forsythia. So you've seen this yellow flowering shrub. You saw quince before that. Then actually you saw the sequence is winter blooming jasmine, then flowering quince, then forsythia, then lilacs, and then it's salvias, butterfly bush, crepe myrtles. You can just go right down the line. Rose of Sharon. Here, you can have something in the yard in bloom pretty much almost all year, at least 10 months out of the year. And lilacs are a core for that fragrance. Everyone goes, I want the one my grandmother had. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that story, I run that memory thing because the fragrance is it just sticks with you. And so all lilacs are, I can't say that. Almost all lilacs are fragrant. Your French lilacs, if it has a fancy French name, like you're going, I don't understand that name. That's a French lilac. They got the fancy colors, but no real fragrance. The common lilacs, that's the one your grandparents grew, Syringa vulgaris. That's the big one, gets at least as tall as I am, big vase shaped, gets like this big pinnacles on it. That's the biggest, that's one that people recognize the most. Probably the #1 seller, or it has been. It's trending. It may change. The last couple of years have been changing. The same plant, if we dwarf that, it's called a bloomerang. There's a whole dwarf series of plants because a lot of folks don't need a plant that's as big as your house eaves next to the house or the patio. But if you can dwarf it down to this size and have the same flower and same fragrance, all of a sudden you go, wow, that's a great plant. And you can get it to repeat bloom called bloomerang. Now all of a sudden you've got, so there's really 3 main varieties. There's common or standard Syringa vulgaris, lilac. There's the dwarf ones. They're the same plant, just half size. So generally they'll be about 3-4 feet tall. No pruning needed. They just do it themselves. Much easier. Stays nice and cute and ball shaped. Whereas if you let a standard lilac go, I mean, it can take over. It can get too big sometimes. You almost need to reset it, get it back to the size that you want. And the time that you prune lilacs is right after they're done blooming. So just enjoy the fragrance, enjoy the bloom, And then right after they're done, it's going to be leafing out. You'll be going, I don't know if I should do this. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable, but do it. Just reset it. If you prune lilacs when you normally prune everything else in the yard, January, February, March, you can prune that. You can prune lilacs. They'll like it. They'll be fine. You'll just have no flowers because you've pruned the flowers off. When they're setting flowers from last autumn through winter, and then they bloom in spring. If you prune in winter, you prune off all the lilac. And you can tell the neighbors that they pruned or had a gardener that was a novice, didn't know what to do, because all the flowers on that lilac will be coming off to the sides. They should be all up to the top, but they pruned all the flowers off except for a couple of them over here, and you can go, oh, novice. They pruned at the wrong time. I'm going to send you a handout on how to prune in detail. It's 1 page, 1.5 pages in detail. Let me send the clipboard around. If you want a copy of that, I will send you a link by the end of the day with a PDF that just tells you how to do that. So you can open it up on any device, whether it's a phone, a tablet, a desktop, whatever, your readers, you can read that. Okay, so it'll be to you very shortly. I've got how to fertilize, because we've got to go deep into fertilizing with lilacs. If you don't fertilize them right, they're not going to bloom. In a couple of years, they'll stop blooming. You've got to fertilize. The other one is, there were 4 of them. Anyway, I'll tell you in a second. As soon as I get that clipboard back, I'll tell you. Or maybe you could tell me. Is it right there? How to prune, how to fertilize. Yeah. So healthy vegetables. Next week's class is on vegetables. So I'm kind of priming the pump. So I'm unleashing the buyers and going, I don't care if it's cold or not. I want full complement, all sizes, all vegetables, all the time, everywhere. Everything you can find, bring them. And so next week we unleash. It's still a touch early, but you start the class ahead of time so people know how to garden, not in the season, just ahead. So this will be just ahead, but I think you could start if you protect things. So that I'll give that to you as well. And then there's a confusion. So I changed it up. Normally, April is too busy for us to have garden classes on a Saturday. It's just too crazy. There's not enough parking space. So we've been shifting for the last couple of years to 3 o'clock on Friday because I have plenty of capacity. Well, I decided that's too hard on me, the crew, the marketing. It's easier to keep it the same. So I changed it. We're going to keep classes going at 9:30 on Saturday through April. Okay? Then we'll take a break in May because the facility just cannot take, there's too many customers. The entire town will be in. So I don't have enough capacity to do a class and help everyone. So we'll take a break. We come back at it the second week in June. We'll start classes again for the summer series. So we're going to stay at 9:30. Unfortunately, my assistant did not get that note, or we forgot, or the system, we have so many deadlines. We just submitted it to all the magazines, and we said back in January, we know the deadlines are Friday at 3. So we're getting these phone calls. Don't come on Friday. Come on Saturday. Don't go on Friday. Come on Saturday at 9:30. Tune in here Saturday at 9:30. So I'm going to send you the link to the garden classes, the remainder of the spring, just so you know, because people keep asking. You folks online, on the right-hand side, under comments, you've got the link already. Go ahead and click those. Go ahead and click them. Go ahead. Take time. Click them. Because it helps my Google ranking. Go ahead. Make a comment. Subscribe, do all that. Just say hello, where are you from? That'd be great because Google loves that. We go right to the top when you do that. Anyway, you've got all that, okay? All right, so lilacs are about to bloom. People freak out because they're blooming, and then we get that last frosty, snowstormy thing in April. Oh, should I cover it? Should I worry? Don't worry. They're fine. If you want to really take advantage of a snowstorm or something, just clip them off, put them in a vase, bring them indoors, and enjoy the fragrance indoors. That's what lilacs are for. So let me just go over a couple of them. This is a white lilac. Everyone thinks of purple or that light violet color. That's the standard. That's the original. Okay, once you've sold a few thousand of those, you kind of get bored and go, well, what else can we do? White, I think, has more fragrance. It's very nice to see across the yard because it's that contrast between the white and the green is just really dramatic, whereas purple kind of mutes down into, it's harder to see from across the yard. These are big plants. This will easily get as tall as you and I and as wide. And if you let it go, it will go up to about 10 feet or so. Okay, just that's the size. So they're made to be maybe to shade the side of your patio or deck. It's made to in the corners where you need something bigger to fill in that yard, to soften up that cinder block, prison yard they call backyard sometimes. You just want to soften up some of that hardscape. That's where this thing goes. It's a big boy or big girl or whatever it is. Gets up like this. Super fragrant. We also do have a new violet color. This one, these two are related. They both get big. Here we've bred a little bit of color into the foliage. I don't know if you can see that. It's a pretty, the foliage is unique. And the reason the foliage is unique is the flowers is a bright violet purple. So it's like common one like you're used to, only it almost glows in the dark. It's very pretty color. It's literally this color. The flower is that color. So that's the color. It's very bright. It's not red, it's not purple, it's something in between. They call it violet. So same size, big. Just you've got a blonde, you got a brunette. It's the only real difference. The flower color is the real difference, is the change. Okay, we'll show you how to plant these in a second. Just want to go over the varieties. This one, this is called Miss Chem lilac. Canadian lilacs are very, very, very similar. They get up about eye level, something like that. They're much more shapely, kind of ball-shaped, without really pruning or doing anything. They just stay in this color, and they load up. You can see the number of flowers. I think they have more flowers on them than a common lilac does. And that's their claim to fame. They're just covered. Literally, they'll just be covered with flowers. Not blue, purpley, kind of the common colors you're used to. Purple, common lilac color. I say common just because I've sold so many of them. I'll show you the miniature one. I've got this right off my patio. So I've got a big patio. I'm overlooking the Dells. It's a two-story house. It's on a slope. So I have to have raised beds, steps that go around. But with steps are ugly by themselves. But if you skirt them with plants, it looks great. So I've got an herbal garden next to my one set of steps going from the front yard to the back. From the backyard to the lower yard down towards the pond, we've got big steps. And so I've got big beds right next to those. Planted one of these just because I didn't want something huge where everything behind it disappears. I wanted to have something pretty, but you could overlook and see the next garden over, the next raised bed over. This one is in the ground. It's been there for years. Maybe it's a little bit wider than it is taller, so it's about this tall, about this wide, mounding shape. It is loaded up with flowers just like this, not quite open yet. I'm at 5,700 feet, so I'll be maybe a couple weeks later than some of you folks out in Dewey, Prescott Valley, but I'll be before you folks in Highland Pines and Groom Creek. So it depends on your elevation a little bit, but they all bloom within 2 weeks of each other. They're gonna bloom in April, guaranteed, every year. You can just count on them. They're also considered fire-wise. So if you're in that wildland interface where you're worried about fire, lilacs are on the fire-resistive. Yes, if you dump gasoline on them and you light them on fire, they might burn, but they're very cool burning. Not like pine trees. Pine trees are like, or manzanita. Phew, it's just like, manzanita is gasoline in leaf form. So that's one that's really, you gotta be strategically where to plant that. This one will actually cool a fire down as it hits it. So, and it's considered drought hardy. This is bloomerang lilac. It's a dwarf, bloomerang. And the reason they call it bloomerang, repeat blooms. So it guaranteed twice. If we get a monsoon pattern, 3 times. It'll bleed and bloom in fall color. Literally can have bloom on it while it has that gold color. I think all lilacs are like aspen gold in the fall. Real pretty fall color to them. Yeah. So do deer like lilacs? So they're on the deer resistive list. So generally the deer read the list and leave them alone, generally. I have had some deer nibble on mine. I think they're bored while just grazing through, and they're just moving on. Okay, so deer they've got two stomach system like they're like cows. So sometimes they'll eat things, and before they realize they don't like it, the second set of intestine or whatever, however that anatomy works, they finally go, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot, I don't like this, and they move. They can nibble a little bit. Generally, they leave them alone though. You'll see them right out there where deer, like Yavapai Hills, like the thick of it, you'll see them out there. So this is one, if you've got deer issues, what I would recommend, so I help customers in deer areas, as soon as you plant this thing, we'll show you how to plant this in a second. As soon as you plant it, you're in there, it's their living room. If I put a new chair in your living room, are you gonna notice? Are you gonna go sit in it and try it and see how it feels and kind of maybe move it around to see, invite friends over to try it out too, because all the family's there with you? They're gonna notice this the second you put it in the yard. I mean, hour one, as soon as the daylight goes down, they're over going, hey, look at this. Hey, Bob, come over here. Look at this thing. Let's check this out. I wonder if it's any good. If you see that, you might get some deer repellent and just spritz the foliage, because that will keep, they're going to test it. If you spray it, they're going to go, man, that smells terrible. Who plants this? What was she thinking? They'll just move on. So, and once you get them going, this isn't good, they'll just always pass it by. So if you're in heavy pressure with deer and rabbits, that kind of stuff, spray it right off the bat. Don't wait for them to come test it and then spray it. Be proactive. That's kind of the best way to use repellents out in the yard. Yep. Javelina, it's best to take the bucket when it's left over, fill it with concrete, and then throw it at them. Take the shovel and just beat them. No, not so much with javelina. But javelinas do not bother lilac at all. It's definitely for sure, don't do that. Deer, a little bit. Rabbits seem to leave them alone. So generally, they're not a good tasting thing. That's what the flower looks like. This just opened up. This storm is not holding spring back. Plants are ready to go. The ones that are daylight driven, like the days are long enough, they're just, I don't care about the weather. I'm in, let's go bloom. And so lilacs are right there on that cusp. So by next week, you're going to see lilacs all over town blooming. And so if you can, plant them this week. Even in the storm, they'd be fine. Just plant them. So when they open up, they won't go in that transplant shock. They'll just wake up in your yard going, I went to sleep last fall in this bucket. I don't know where I'm at now, but might as well just bloom. And so they'll bloom longer for you. If you wait, so I sell more lilacs where they're bloom because they're like candy. Every shopping cart will have one of these. They can sometimes shed the flower as they adjust to their new environment. If you can put them in before they wake up, it's better. That's why we recommend planting trees, fruit trees, before they wake up. That's the reason why. So they'll fruit for you. They'll do better for you. Yeah.
I have a small.
Yeah. Oh, can you keep lilacs in a container, especially small ones? The dwarfies, absolutely. It would do fantastic in a container for years and years and years. One of the big boys, a common lilac, the regular size, it's going to take a pretty large pot to keep that going for years. You could grow it for several years in a container, but eventually they're going to be so big, they're going to want to bust out the pot. It's a big plant. And so their roots, they've got a very extensive root structure, which is why they are so drought hardy. But this one, mine's in basically a raised bed. So it's in a confined space. It's been there for years and years. I don't think I'll ever have to move it. I'll finally get bored with it and dig it up just out of spite. Okay, I got a new butterfly bush I want to try. And I'll trade things out sometimes.
So how, one of the things that I found in the summer, it's hard to water.
Water your containers? Well, I'll cover watering and how to plant in a second. So I think we'll go deeper into that for you. So hold on to that question. We'll come back to it. We'll go deep on that, because there's a way to keep lilacs blooming longer just by keeping the hydration consistent. This one I just want to point out because it just came in. We're cheating a little bit. So we got farms down in Tucson, so they're at least a month ahead of us. So I got friends that kind of, hey, would you grow some butterfly bush for us? Or also called summer lilac, because it has the same kind of pinnacle kind of flower. Butterfly bush, the reason they call it butterfly bush is butterflies absolutely think they've died and gone to heaven. You will have butterflies if you have this, and all varieties. It'll have you monarchs, swallowtails, painted ladies, everything will be attracted to this. And so I just brought it going, gardeners are here. Isn't that pretty? Yeah. Normally these bloom for us, usually starting May. So this is a month early. So normally they start blooming May through summer. But if you stage your farms right, you can kind of cheat it, bring some in a little bit earlier, inspire gardeners to. Hummingbirds do like them, yeah. Yeah, hummingbirds do like this as well. The nectar is very sweet. It's very high in all the stuff that birds like. And so it's a good bloomer for here. This is one too. Butterfly bush is a companion plant to lilacs. We put them in the same garden frequently because they take the same water schedule, the same light, they take the same garden soil, but they bloom at different times. That's a good thing if you're designing gardens. That's sort of what you want as a designer. That's like primo. So this is one we frequently put together. This is also one that if you don't prune it, I mean, small children and dogs have been lost in butterfly bush. I mean, it gets so big. I mean, they'll get as big as a garden shed. It's ridiculous. And so you got to really whack on them pretty hard, more so butterfly bush than lilac. Lilac, you won't have to prune that much. If you're doing it annually right after they bloom, you can easily, with just a little bit of nip and tuck and just a haircut, you can keep it down pretty easily the size that you want. With that being said, if you want to keep a standard lilac down to hip high, boy, that's going to be a lot of work. You just might want to plant the dwarf one just so you don't have to work so hard at it. So get the appropriate size for your garden space so you don't have to work so much. I would not put a standard lilac right next to the house. It's just going to be so hard to keep it underneath the eaves, especially if it's a one-story house or ranch house. It's going to be hard. It's going to want to always bump up to those gutters unless you bump it out a little bit. Now I've got a 2-story house overlooking the Dells, because it's 2.5 stories really. And my office is downstairs on that west side. It gets hot. That in the summer, that office it's intolerable. And so I planted a lilac there against the wall to shade that wall, and it does it. Cools it right down. So I get the solar gain in the winter. So right now it's a little bit warmer because it's defoliated. It's about to bloom, and then as soon as the starts to heat up, it leaves out, and now it shades that western wall. But it's 2.5 stories, so there's no way it's ever going to reach the gutters on that side of the house. So there's ways to strategize how to do that. Unfortunately, it's the west side where no one really goes on the property line. So we have to go, and that's why I planted the one that's most fragrant. I like the fragrance. I planted white so that I can go cut those flowers, bring them inside, and enjoy them inside. So strategy somewhat. It really worked out well. Is there a question? Oh, how long can a lilac live? Oh my gosh, longer than you and I. So lilacs live a long time, like decades. Yeah. Oh, then dig it up and plant a new one. I know a great garden center. You can buy a brand new color. If it's not performing, rip it out. Oh, sentimental. Yeah. So when do plants age out? There's indications when plants get old, like you and I. There's some. At my age, I mean, I was a pretty good-looking guy in my youth, but now you'd take a picture and put me on a magazine, but not anymore. I'm kind of, it's just don't have that same kind of look that I used to have. So hard to say that out loud, but it's just the way it is. Plants are just like people. So sometimes they'll stop, they'll get wrinkly and kind of, they hunch over a little bit. They don't have the posture they used to, they stop blooming. Sounds like you might be at that stage. What I would do is I'd be shopping this year, or I might even buy one that's similar. If you know what variety that is, what color it is, what I might do is buy a new one, plant it close to that so it gets established. Then I would cut this lilac back. After it's done blooming, I would just whack on it dramatically. I mean, really cut on it. And I would juice it with fertilizer. We'll show you how to do that in a second. And then if it didn't bloom next year, I would rip that sucker out and let this one grow. And so this one would take front stage. This one would be like back out here, because once they stop blooming, they might not ever bloom again. Okay, so roses do that. They age out. They're only good for about 10, 12 years at most. They just stop blooming. They just get old and they choke themselves out. They just can't, they lose their vigor. And so you need to trade. That's why I tell folks, trade about 10% of your yard out, your plants, every year. So you get this 10-year rotation. So you always have something young and vibrant. If you never do that, you'll be that landscape that has those old overgrown junipers out front that look woody and overgrown. You tell they've never been replanted or nothing. It's time for those to go. But if they take them out, the whole yard is empty. If you just slowly rotate some freshness into your gardens, into your landscape, you'll never date your landscape. You know, I could drive through neighborhoods and go, yep, 1990s, yep, 2000. Oh, look, they've remodeled. They're keeping up. That's good. They're a gardener. Oh, they're a retired gardener, and they've let things overgrow. It's gotten ahead of them. So you can just tell the stage gardeners are at, and who's a gardener, who's just an investment property. So there's, in your neighborhood, you got them all. Okay. Butterfly bush. Just bring it up, summer lilac. Plant them. Butterflies will be attracted to it. Butterflies like lilacs too, but they bloom so early, it's really just the swallowtails come in to them. So it's, the monarchs aren't migrating yet. The pink ladies are still at the lower elevations. So, but the swallowtails, which is our state butterfly, do actually like lilacs. Okay. Oh yeah. Yeah. So butterfly bush, you treat different. So your question was, we know you're there. I'm glad you're tuned in. So don't forget, like, comment, do all that stuff. Butterfly bush, when do you prune that as opposed to lilacs? Lilacs are spring bloomers. You prune those right after they're done blooming. In spring, summer bloomers, which are lilacs, crepe myrtles, rose sharons, those things you bloom in the winter, and then they bloom in the summer. So you're always about a couple seasons ahead when you bloom. So butterfly bush are definitely pruned. January, February, March is when you prune those. You're still doing it right now. Absolutely. And then they will set, new growth will come up. They'll set a flower starting, usually in June. Butterfly bush are pretty much in full bloom from that point forward. Okay. What else I got up here? Butterfly bush is a tree. Can be done. It's difficult. We actually carry butterfly trees, ivory feathers, ivory something or other. We got a lilac tree. It's got white flowers. It's quite striking. It's a big one. But it take a while to take that one stalk, train it, and then to be a tree. Generally, what we do, if you see a lilac tree, we've grafted it. So we'll take a cutting onto a stalk, graft it on there so we can control the size, and we can get it up to size bigger, have a trunk that matches the head or the crown. So, but there are lilac trees. Yeah, butterfly trees. Super unusual. You have more dwarf, like I personally would rather have like a red bud, similar in size to a lilac. It's got that heart-shaped leaf. You can get some dwarfed ones that are quite easy to grow, drought hardy. They're native. So there's probably better choices. Just personally, I'm not talking myself out of sale, but just gardeners. Here's what I would do. I'd personally lean that way. I'm after easy and beautiful. That's what I want. If I can have my cake and eat it too. I live in America. 40 cents and I want it supersized. That's what I want, okay? This is Salvia greggii, or autumn sage. It's a companion with these guys. This is a little guy. Only gets about knee high, maybe this tall, kind of ball-shaped, 3 feet at most. You can easily keep it down shorter than that. This starts to bloom by the end of April. It will start to bloom around town. and they don't stop until autumn. So it's just a great little, it's also an herbal autumn sage, because when you rub the foliage, it has a sagey scent to it, which means most of the animals will leave it alone. Javelina, deer, rabbits, antelope, all the guys that are out there in the valley areas, they leave them alone. They leave them alone. Herbal things, animals don't like herbal scents. So rosemary's, lavender, thyme, they don't like those things. I mean, we do, but they don't. So it's a good way to, you can almost use it as a repellent to hide the scent of other things. So anyway, autumn sage, #1 seller. You don't normally in red. I thought I'd bring this one because it's white. It's very unusual to see a white autumn sage. So I'm talking to gardeners, but red's pretty common. Hummingbirds like them all. This is like a Snickers bar to them. They just cannot resist it. They got to have more chocolate. Oh my gosh, it's that. Because its best blooms are in autumn. So yes, they start blooming now, but they just get better and bigger and more robust. And autumn is when they really shine. And they're one of the few things blooming in the autumn. When that thing is still in bloom, they're one of the few things that are left. When it's them and mums, echinaceas maybe are blooming. So one of the few things that kind of cover that. Okay. How to plant. Let's just pick one. We'll take this white one. So plant this and treat it like you would a tree or a rose or a big vine, like a honeysuckle. Think of it like that. You don't want to treat this like a flower. This is a drought-hardy plant. So it's got a real deep root structure and very massive, very wide. It's got a very fibrous, big root mass, which makes it very robust. And so the roots are going to go down about 18 inches, maybe 2 feet at most. Then they're going to start going sideways, looking for your flower beds, your gardens, your other trees. Where else is there water and food out in the yard? They just start searching through the yard, looking for more nutrients, more soil. If you know that's how they're going to grow, just provide that for them. So you want the hole to be same depth as the bucket. You do not need to go very deep. Go this deep, and if you just can't stand it because you're a gardener and you just have to do a little bit more because you'd like to nurture plants, go maybe another 6 inches. Don't go that deep. Go wide. Width is what gets more flowers. Width. Go 3 times as wide, saucer shaped, and that's the size of your hole. Okay? Now, these do like a rich soil. So you do want to add a bag. When you're buying this, get a bag of premium mulch. This is compost. Looks like mocha. It's real fine. We screened it down to 1/2 inch minus size. It's made to amend the soil to keep it from compacting right back down into this heavy clay soil. We're trying to encourage the roots to go sideways. The other benefit with organics when you add this into your soil is it just naturally attracts worms. All the good stuff that's in the garden that you won't find when you first dig the hole. There's no worms in your garden. There's just death and decay. That the contractor scraped off all of your topsoil, which is probably millimeters thick, scraped it all off, and they poured your footers in your driveway. And a lot of you are gardening in dead soil. There are no living things in there. So the organics will help attract that. The mycorrhizal colonies will come. The beneficials that attach themselves to roots, and because we inject all of our plants with that. They come with the plants. It's something we can do for you that's easy, that makes our plants healthier than a box store. So it's kind of our insider tip. Oh, my plants always live from waters. There's a reason. So those things, they feed off of the organics. So it's super important. If you're in real sandy soil, so if you're out towards Granite Mountain, that area, or that crushed granite, water just goes whoosh. It's going to hold the moisture in around the roots so the plant can root out easier, more consistent, especially in summer. If you got really heavy clay soil like that 69 corridor, Yampai Hills, the ranch, all of Prescott Valley, Dewey, heavy clay, so caliche layers. So that's going to keep that soil from compacting right back down. It's going to keep it lighter and fluffier so the roots can, again, get through the soil. There's a lot of benefits with this. You dig your hole, take anything that's bigger than a golf ball. So roots, rocks, debris. I found bricks the last time I planted the contractor buried bricks. He just had a load, didn't want to take them to the dump and buried them. Okay, I can deal with that. I'll throw them away 2 years later. So anything bigger than the golf ball, get rid of that. That stuff heats up in summer and bakes the roots. So the particles are too big to hold water molecules. It just creates a furnace. Screen that out. Most of you are going to have soil left. Some of you can hit a boulder. You can have this big rock. You have to backfill with some extra stuff, maybe more of this. You can go up about 50-50 with mulch to native soil. We generally go, the instructions you get when you buy a lilac, 25% mulch to your native soil, or about 1 shovel for every 3 shovels of native soil. I've cheated up to about 50-50 if I needed some extra. If you need more than that, you need to get a bag of topsoil. If you need to raise the elevation, that's what topsoil is for, is to actually fill in and add some extra space. So, but most of us, about 25% to your native soil. It's going to be perfect. When you get all done, you're going to use that, blend it all together, backfill around the roots. Let's show you the roots. So that's always a mystery for some reason. I don't know why. That's like the perfect plant. It's not root bound. You don't ever want to buy a plant where the roots are going like this. Once they start wrapping around themselves, they never stop. They just keep doing this. They're trained just to do this. They say to root prune them. That's just when you see a plant that's root bound, the roots are too constrictive. That's usually a plant that didn't sell last year. It's a carryover. And so it's been in the bucket too long. And then they try to sell it to you at a discount. It's a box store thing. So they tend to sell. You just don't want that. This is perfect. You're seeing fibrous root hairs showing up. Here I would simply massage the roots a little bit. That's about it. That's even painful to me. That's good. You see the root hairs now starting to come out. I'd plant that, backfill my soil around that, pack it down, and water it in. That's how you. So your grandparents, some of them said, beat it up till there's no soil left. Don't do that. This is my baby. You wouldn't do that. Treat it with care. So the other thing too with lilacs is because they're drought hardy, this should be left exposed. Leave it where the air can touch the top of the root ball. Don't bury it. If soil touches this bark area, on a lilac especially, it will die. It's crown rot. So there's bacterial start eating the sugars. Everything likes the flower. Bees, butterflies, and they like the sap. So bacteria like the sap. That tastes good. So they'll tend to start eating the bark area. So as long as you leave this at soil level, you don't have mulch and soil touching that, you're good to go. Okay, so that's a mistake. I've seen some rookie moves. They just were too either sloppy or they were thinking, oh, deeper is better. It's how we do it in Phoenix, Palm Springs. Not how you do it up here. Leave that exposed. If you're in heavy, heavy clay soil, I would say leave a portion of the root out of the ground. Leave about that much out of the ground and then just mound the soil slight so it's on a very slight feathered area so I can ensure at least that much of the roots can breathe during the monsoons, because this will be fully leafed out, and then you're still watering like it's June and it's hot. You're twice a week, and then you get an afternoon rain a couple times. All of a sudden, the leaves start to yellow. They stop blooming. They're starting to drop a few leaves. And oh, what's going on? It's being overwatered. That guarantees you got it. It helps it to breathe. So drought hardy plants, super important for that. Make sense? When I'm all done, I'll put my drip irrigation on top of that mound, or put my water basin around that so I can water things. I'll give it a handful of all-purpose plant food. This is our main food. It's great for transplants. It's got bird guano and cottonseed meal and fairy dust and all kinds of stuff in it. Got the magic is here. This is an organic food that every time water touches that, it's going to release a little bit of food over about a 3-month period of time. Perfect. That's what you want to do to encourage the root growth as fast as you can. Okay? So about a handful, look salt and pepper when you're all done. Every time the water hits that or the irrigation hits it, it's going to release a little food every time for the next 3 months. What lilac need are very consistent food patterns, especially while it's growing that flower in the fall and winter. I'll cover that in just a second when we finish this planting. Same depth, 3 times the width, 25% mulch, add a handful of all-purpose plant food, and then water it in with Root and Grow. I know I've got that here. Just for you all. Root, does it show up on camera okay? There you go, Root and Grow. This is a compost tea. So we actually brew up, this is our recipe. We brew up, boil some tea. It looks like fish emulsion. You're from the West Coast, Northwest, they love their fish emulsion. It looks like that without the stink. Fish emulsion is disgusting. This is not disgusting, okay? But it looks like molasses. 3 tablespoons a gallon of water. Usually I'll mix this up before I even start a planting project. I just have it in my 2-gallon watering can waiting to go. I'll hydrate everything. At the very end, I just go, grow and be happy. It's for transplant shock. So the plant is absolutely going to freak out. You take it from its only home it's known and throw it into your yard, it's not going to be happy. This is helping it to kind of get used to that new space. And it kind of activates, it makes everything, it just activates all the food, the mulch, it makes everything go. So I would do this every 2 weeks until I see it stabilized. You'll start to see new flowers or new leaves coming out. You're going, oh, it's looking happy. Oh, I am a gardener. As soon as you see that, you can probably stop this because it's adjusted. It's used to that space, and it says now it's rooting out. As soon as you see new leaf growth, what happens right afterwards is root growth. Just like boom, boom, just like that, almost at the same time. So if you see new roots, you have if you see new leaves, you have new roots, just like that. And then you can cut this out. So it makes sense. So 3 things: mulch, food, root and grow, and how to plant it. That's it. Okay, questions? Oh, if you don't do drip irrigation, not everyone does that. That's the micro irrigation, or the spaghetti tubing that goes out with the emitter. Some people actually do still water by hand. And so that's, some of you, you're not gardeners, you're waterers. You just love watering. That's your thing. That's your therapy. You love a hose, you love a cup of coffee, you love watching butterflies and watering things. I like doing that too. So for those folks, generally we put a water basin or a little like mound around, a moat around that to keep the water in. It's usually made out of soil. Sometimes I'll make them out of concrete. You'll see these rings, scalloped rings that go around. That's mainly to help you to water. It's not really pretty. It's made to help you water easier your plants if you water by hand. So there's a technique for that. Whatever you do, for the love of gardening, do not plant a lilac in a divot. That's a Phoenix thing. I want a rain harvest. Make it easier. Don't plant these below grade. Be at grade or above, or you will, the risk of losing it goes up dramatically. Just a second. So it'll be right there. So just kind of at grade because they're draw hardy. Okay. Yeah. So 2nd year lilac, the pressure's off because you've rooted out. So it's great. So you did last year, it succeeded. You probably have more flowers this spring than last year because you've got more roots. More roots equals more flowers. And so it's probably easier. You're mainly going to be food. We'll cover that in just a second. Okay. So year 2, they just get better and better. Lilacs get better with age. Okay. But food, yeah. Oh, nice, fun. Oh, good. Oh, so just so you all know, she planted up she harvested one of the pups from the babies from her neighbors, you gardeners, and took it home. Said, I'm going to plant this, see if I can get it to grow. It's kind of half experiment, but just to see if it would grow, and it's doing great. So well done. So how long will it take for it to grow? Generally, it's going to take 3 to 4 years. So this is probably a 3-year-old lilac. It's probably 3 years old. Some of the bigger ones, 4 or 5. So we're holding on to them. We don't sell whips or babies because our customers come here and they don't want to wait. They've got the time and the energy and the resources to just, if I had a nickel for every time, I don't want to wait. I want it big. I want it now. I want flowers now. We hold them at the farm an extra year just so they will be more glorious and of blooming age. for you at the garden center. So okay. Probably at least 2 years. I'd like to know when it finally blooms for you. When it does bloom, let me know so I can share that with other folks. So, hey, you can harvest the babies underneath, take them out, and 3 years later, they'll be in bloom. Oh, and granite. Ouch. Yeah. Watering. I said treat them like trees and shrubs. You're probably going to water, if you're buying lilacs this weekend, I encourage you. Good to go. When you plant that, you're probably going to water that 2 times a week for the first year. If it's 2 years old, you can probably back that off to once a week. Okay, just a deep soak, because your roots go from here. They go from where's a good lilac? They go from this is all the roots are here. The second year, the roots are doubled in size. They've got quadrupled in size. They've got roots going everywhere, so the pressure is off. That first year, they're more dependent on you because the roots are smaller. As they grow and mature, they become more and more drought hardy. Year 3, you could probably go on that Panama Canal cruise. The system goes down, hasn't watered for 3 weeks. As you're extending your stay down to Costa Rica, I don't know, and they'll probably still be alive just fine because they're that robust. So, but they got to get their roots underneath them before they become that drought hardy. So you can plant these in the fall. Although this time of year, I have more choices, more varieties. In the fall, I have one variety, common lilacs. That's it. Now I've got white, purple, and violet. I got variegated. I've got Sensation is a red lilac with a white variegation. It's spectacular. It's glorious. It's standard lilac with beautiful flower. I don't have that in the fall. I only have it now. This is your best selection of lilacs is right now. If you're not ready to plant now, don't worry. It's okay. I'll have lilacs year round. Just this is when you see the most variety. I'll sell all the lilacs down, and that's when the roses come. So the roses will be here by the end of April. So I'll wait for the frost. They're budded out really heavy. We're trying to schedule those to bloom the last week of April. So there's a trick to it, but we get them all to bloom at the same time, and we're setting the stage for Mother's Day because okay, we need beautiful things for Mother's Day. It's the peak of the planting season, but guys need some help with gift ideas for the mothers in their lives, and we're here to help them. So roses are we'll have 1,000 of them land all at once. And then after those are all gone, then the butterfly bush, the rose of Sharon, the crepe myrtles, all that summer series. So there's rotation that happens. It's really about bench space and farm space. How do you grow more plants on less acreage? It's all about that crop rotation. So it's what we call it. We have a 52-week grow calendar. Literally, it's 52 weeks. We go, week number 1, what do we want? House plants. It's January 1st. There's not much going on. Maybe some fruit trees can maybe start showing up. I don't know. But by now, you just start going, okay, when do the roses, when do things start rotating? And so you'll see this change happen at the garden center. So you all will be here because you're here in a snowstorm. That means you're probably regulars. I know many of the faces. And so you see the differences as things change. The novice gardener only comes in May. They think that's all the selection there is. No, there's so much more. So yeah. No. So her question is, so she buys a lilac today. When can she plant it right now? Just plant it in the yard, you're fine. So it's not like what we will do, we're keeping them in the yard unprotected. We don't cover them. We don't do anything. We want them acclimated. So we're getting them used to our climate, our sun, our cold. It's got to get used to warm days, cold nights. It's got to get used to it. So all those plants, they stay out there. Now, as they bloom, we might cover with that. Once they're in full bloom, we'll cover them, mainly so they stay perfect because, they're inspirational. They're fragrant. I'll sell more lilacs as long as they're perfect. So we might cover them when they're in bloom, just to keep them looking good, but quite honestly, but when they start blooming, they start selling as fast as they're in bloom. So that's really, they're going to live no matter what. How long can you get them to bloom longer just by covering them a little bit? Yeah, you can do that. It looks like next week the weather goes pretty nice. Yeah, pretty nice. Yeah.
Sun.
Yeah.
Southwest, can they handle
How
that?
much sun do lilacs need? They need at least 6 hours. 6 hours or more. The more sun you give them, the more flowers you get.
They can handle
They can handle the what? Mine's on the west side. Yeah, so it's shaded until about, I don't know, 1 o'clock, and then it's brutal. And it's on a reflective wall. Again, I'm using it to shade my office. So I want it to get big. But lilacs have a way of protecting themselves. They're so large, they shade their root structure. So they don't, that's how they're so drought hardy. They get the foliage that cools. They're really good at cooling their portion of the garden and shading their root structure. So they'll take the wind on the top of those ridge lines. They'll take it. Dwarf, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So her question was, can a bloomerang, that dwarf one, can it handle being in a pot? She's giving me all the parameters. She's trying to stump me here. How much do I need to water that in the summer and it's 95 degrees, there's 10% humidity, and there's a prevailing southwest wind? Can it handle that? Yeah, it can handle that easily. So probably better than most things. I would say I would treat it like I would a rose in a container. So with containers, if you're doing that, it's a great way to go. Bigger is your friend. The bigger, because it's about soil capacity. So your soil is like a sponge. The bigger the sponge, the more mistakes you can make with watering, food, that kind of stuff. Also, lilacs will use the food and the soil. So you'll fertilize them pretty regularly. We'll cover that in just a second. But you'll just see that soil, I don't know where it goes, it just disappears. The plants are using it. So you'll probably have to add some potting soil every spring. You'll just top it off, just kind of add to it. Everyone goes, it blows away. No, it's not blowing away. The plants are actually digesting and using the soil if it's a healthy soil and it's a healthy plant. So just add some extra every year. Say minimum would be probably an 18-inch pot for a bigger plant like that, because that lilac's going to be this big. You can hedge a little bit bigger, but I would say minimum. Everyone wants to go proportionate to the plant. They're going, where's that bloomerang at? It's right here. They go, no, I don't want a pot this big. It looks out of proportion. Well, yeah, right now it does, but it's going to be, within 2 months, it's going to be perfectly balanced. It will look good. So bigger, I would say 18 inch is going to be about that big, or a little bit bigger. 20 inch would be more. More soil, the better. I don't care if it's deeper, wider, just more soil is going to be better for you. But that would last for years and years in a container like that. Okay. Yeah. Oh, you gardeners, you're always trying to overdo it, making life so hard. So she takes her soil and scarifies and opens up the earth and tries to receive more soil so it blends better. Oh, and then the butterflies and hummingbirds come and you know what I do? I open the bag and I chuck it on. I walk away. It does the same thing. So you don't have to go through all the extra steps. If there's debris or some left last year's leaves or something, I might take that and just do it, but I don't open it up or try to add some more stuff. If I've got flowers and in amongst my container, sometimes I'll use a nice showy, a rose or lilac, and then I'll put flowers skirted on the front, pansies or geraniums or something like that. There I might take last year's annuals, because they're probably dead, try to get as much soil out as I can to put some extra soil in so I can plant my new annual, trying to get some fresh soil in there. Lilacs are so large, after year one, they're going to be the showpiece by themselves. There's no extra room for other flowers. Whereas, hydrangeas, some of these other things are smaller, you got more space or less, they're not as big. Okay, so yeah, don't make it complicated. Okay, great. Yeah. So she's got a lilac. She's up in the pine trees, and she's thinking she planted her husband. She's throwing her husband under the bus. May have planted it underneath the pine trees. Maybe there's not enough sun. Did it bloom last year?
Okay, that's an indication. If it doesn't bloom, it's not enough sun. So it could be a plant where it'll start to lean, or it'll be one-sided. It'll kind of grow this way. It's reaching for the sun. That's what's happening. So it sounds like, yeah, you can move those and move them as soon as you can. This weekend, move them before they bloom. You want to move them while they're dormant. So January, February, March is ideal. Well, close enough. Just grab it. Get as much soil as you can. What I would do when you're transplanting anything, especially lilacs, get your new hole dug ahead of time so it's ready to go. It's so dry. I know we just had a storm, but the air is so dry in spring. If you just leave it up and just the time it takes to lay it down the ground, dig this hole, you could do some damage. Some of the root hairs can dry out, especially the finer root hairs. So you want to dig it and move it as soon as you can and get it backfilled as soon as you can. Same technique, 3 times as wide, mulch, food. Your key is going to be the root and grow. This is going to save that plant. It won't transplant without it. So this. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're just so dumb. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so let me just reiterate for over here. She's in the pines, and her neighbors are feeding the deer, so she's got herds of them going through her yard. And the adults generally do leave the lilacs alone. It's the youngsters. They're just curious. They just don't know what makes them sick. Let's face it, babies want to kill themselves. There's something about, you got to protect them, or they just don't do well. So deer the same way. They just don't know what's good for them yet. So they tend to nibble on things more. Could she use the deer repellent to help keep the new deer off? It's a great choice. Yes, you can use it while they're in bloom. The main thing they're going to be after is that tender new foliage. That's what they like. Once the foliage starts to become thick and leathery or thicker, they're less prone to eat them. When I've had them eat mine, it's usually when that new growth is coming out and they're nibbling through, and they nibble on some and they leave them alone. It's just what you just said. The adults generally know, I don't like lilacs. I can walk 100 yards and get what I like. Why stay here and eat this thing? It's what but the babies, they don't know that. So that what the repellents do, they just make it smell and taste bad. There's twofold. It's got an rotten egg smell to it, or an herbally smell. Then when they do eat it, it tastes bitter to them. So there's twofold. It works 2 ways. So it's going to help you both ways. Absolutely. You'll need that for sure. Again, you move that new lilac, I would just spray it, because they're going to go, look, she moved that. I wonder why she did that. Let's go check it out. They're going to be curious about it. So they're just like you and I. So, okay. Food. So the number one complaint I have about lilacs is they stop blooming about 2-3 years out. And here's the reason why. So you did all this work, rich compost, you gave it lots of fertilizer, you really pampered it, and then you forgot about them. And they use that food up in a year, 2 years at most, and year 3, the flowers are smaller, there's less of them. You're going, what's going on? I used to be such a gardener, now I'm not. Why? It's usually a food thing. So lilacs, the most important feeding of the entire year is in the fall. It's going to use that fall food to generate that flower through winter. Then it's going to bloom and then it's going to bloom. Most important, if you're thinking holidays, think Halloween, or your mums and the aspens are turning gold. That's your cue. Fertilize then. All my spring bloomers fertilize then. And you're using this. Again, this breaks down over like a three-month period. So this is all-purpose plant food, 744 all-purpose. Okay, it's granular. You don't mix it in water. You sprinkle it on the ground. And if you're a gardener, and you gardeners know who you are, so you're allowed to scratch it and move it and kind of get it going. But the rest of us can just chuck it on the ground. It will go through the rock and the fabric. Totally teasing. So there's half the group does this over gardening stuff. You're good. We love funky hats and great gloves. We like bright colors. We're all gardeners, so it's all good. So, but just put this on the ground under the drip line. Another rookie move is we focus on the trunk where the roots were. Remember, it only stays there for 1 year, and then it quadruples in size. The roots grow out all over. Focus on the drip line. The finer root hairs are out towards those outer branches. Those are the roots that pick up the food in the water. And so focus your food out there. I would say after they're done blooming, hit them again because they're hungry. They've used all that food up. And now the plant, yet they're forcing all this new foliage on. It takes a lot of energy to create that many flowers and then leaf out. So you'll fertilize right then. I would say fertilize lilacs. Really, if you want spectacular, like your neighbors go, how do you do that? 4 times a year with the same stuff. I'd fertilize it in the spring, the summer, the fall, and the winter. And if you're thinking holidays, think of it this way. Easter, 4th of July, because the monsoons hit. Monsoons almost always hit in July, right then at the 4th of July. Fertilize it then because you can take advantage of that growth. You can have more summer growth, which will set the stage for more flowers next spring if you get more foliage. Of course, the most important feeding is Halloween. We already mentioned that. Now I would hit them again. I hit mine New Year's because I'm setting the stage. I want the buds that are already forming, I want those to be supersized. So I want those flowers not to be this big. I want them to be this big. I want to cut them off, bring them in the vase. I just want to enjoy them for weeks. So if you do that, you will have unbelievable, every single year, lilacs. If you don't do that, about 2-3 years out, it's going to stop blooming. Or the flowers will be smaller or less of them, or just becomes, there's not as much foliage. It might have a yellow hue to them. We call it chlorosis. So those are all indications of, I'm starving to death, help me. So lilacs are very heavy feeders. Things that bloom a lot, heavy feeders. Butterfly bush. This plant here, this is Indian hawthorn or Raphiolepis. Normally it comes as a shrub. So normally you see them in this thing on the ground. That's the normal. I know today I was dealing with gardeners because who's going to show up at a snowstorm in April? Gardeners. This is a tree form. So we've grafted this. This is an anomaly. This is not natural. But if you want a container, a raised bed, if you want an art piece, we call it ornamental shrub or tree. This is a great one. It's evergreen, so it keeps this foliage year round, and then it blooms with these fragrant pink flowers every spring. You just count on it. Loves brutal sun. So this one I keep not in tree form, in shrub form on either side of my garage. It's south facing. Garages are ugly. Big, huge doors. Oh, look at my house. Big, huge doors. I want to soften that up as a gardener. So I've got big, beautiful pots on either side with some nice gardens in them. So it softens that up. And so this one will take that radiant heat coming off the asphalt or the concrete, reflecting off the house, and it blooms consistently. And it's evergreen because I want it to look good year round, not just in the summer. So Raphiolepis. How big does this get? This, you could keep this size. So how big does it get? It could go naturally this big. And then generally, we're probably going to give it a haircut to keep it this size. So there are some bigger varieties out in the gardens that can get up to this big. So, but generally they're dwarfed, okay? We are I think we covered water, we covered food, covered planting, the different varieties. I think we got this. I'm going to leave you with this one thing for next week. So we do have tomatoes. You folks that are new to the area, you are going to be tempted next week to plant tomatoes outside. You're going to be so tempted. Don't do it, okay? We have these for Baghdad, Hillside, Cottonwood, Cordis Junction. They can start planting. But if you're in town in this Quad Cities, Chino Valley, Prescott Valley, this area, you'll need to protect them in some way if you're going to plant, because it's going to get really nice next week. There's going to be one last event like this it's gonna freak everyone out. It's gonna take the plants out. If you look at this cold, if you think cold thoughts, it will die. So if you need a parka out in the garden at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, if you're cold without a jacket on, so is this thing. This is a summer plant. So generally you'll start to see these show up at the garden center, and the crescendo will be the first week in May. We'll have every size, every color. Remember the crop rotation, the calendar says full complement everything, but it will start next week. But you'll need to protect them. Okay, so we'll cover the garden calendars next week. It's how to grow herbs and vegetables here locally. You got to cover how to fertilize them, how to water them, when to plant them, when to plant what. We'll have garden calendars. It'll be kind of technical. And then we'll have a bunch of vegetables. Just letting you know, if you're new to the area, buy them. These are for my retired guys, and they are bored. And they're going, I'm going to plant one. And they put it in a barrel, and they bring it in the garage every night, and then they take it out every day. This is their baby. And during the sun, they're talking to it. Or people like me, I have a radio show. I must pick my tomatoes 2 weeks before you do and talk about it and how good it was, how it melted in your mouth. There's a thing, I need content. And so I'll plant a few in my yard. I'll put plant protectors. There's little mini greenhouses you can put over them. And so I've literally had them snow on my tomatoes, but I don't put my entire garden in yet. Just a few that I could talk about. I mean, gardening's half bragging, right? Yeah, my ryeros are in bloom. How are yours doing? Mine are more fragrant than ever. How are yours doing? There's some of that stuff going on with gardeners. So that's why we have some tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. You can plant right now lettuce, spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, all the leafy things. They like the cold. They loved this morning. They were celebrating. These things would have died. So just kind of set the stage with that. With that, I will hang out as long as you want, answer questions, come look at the plants. And next week's on Herbs and Veggies. Thanks for coming. 9:30 Saturday, not Friday, 9:30. Thanks you all.